Welcome back, first grade boys and girls. Thank you for joining me for Unit 2, Module A, Lesson 5. Are you ready to show me your reading skills today? Today we are going on another reading adventure as we look for clues to be successful with our reading questions today. We will be reading parts of A Fine, Fine School. Let's get started. Good writers understand that opinions are supported by reasons. Remember that writers carefully choose words when they write. They think about what they want readers to understand as they read. Writers choose words in all kinds of writing, including stories, poems, informational texts, and opinions. Our learning intention and success criteria for today says, in this lesson, we are learning how the words authors choose in a story help us to better understand the characters, settings, and events in a story. We will know we are successful when we can identify the story elements of a text, use key details to describe the story elements, and use key details to identify the central message or the lesson of the story. We will be reading pages 22 through 29 of A Fine, Fine School, written by Sharon Creech and illustrated by Harry Bliss. That day, Mr. Keene walked up and down the halls, looking at the children and the teachers. Up and down he walked, up and down, up and down. The next morning, Mr. Keene called everyone together. The children and the teachers were very worried. Mr. Keene said, "This is a fine, fine school with fine, fine children and fine, fine teachers, but not everyone is learning." The children and the teachers were very, very worried. Mr. Keene said, "There are dogs who need to learn how to sit and how to jump creeks." What did he mean? Was he going to make their dogs come to school? There are little brothers and sisters who need to learn how to swing and how to skip. What did he mean? Was he going to make their younger brothers and sisters come to school too? The children and the teachers were very, very, very worried. I noticed our new vocabulary word highlighted in the text today. Did you see our new vocabulary word, boys and girls? The word younger means lived or existed a shorter period of time. In the sentence, was he going to make their younger brothers and sisters come to school too? The word younger means not quite old enough for school. So Tilly's brother would not be as old as Tilly and probably not quite old enough to come to school yet. And you, all of you, children and teachers, you need to learn how to climb a tree and sit in it for an hour, Mr. Keene said. The children and the teachers were very worried. And so, from now on, we will not have school on Saturdays or Sundays or holidays or in the summer. A huge, enormous, roaring cheer soared up to the ceiling and floated out the windows so that everyone in the town heard the fine, fine children and the fine, fine teachers shout, "Fine, fine, fine!" And the fine, fine children and the fine, fine teachers lifted Mr. King up, and they carried him down the hallway and out the doors and through the town, up and down, in and out, and everywhere they went, the people said, "What a fine, fine school, with such fine, fine teachers, and fine, fine children, and a fine, fine principal." Wow, boys and girls, I noticed we have 2 new vocabulary words in one sentence. Do you see those new vocabulary words? I see the word enormous, which means extremely large size or amount. And then I see the word cheer, which means to shout with joy, approval, or enthusiasm. And so, in the sentence, a huge, enormous, roaring cheer soared up to the ceiling and floated out the windows so that everyone in the town heard the fine, fine children and the fine, fine teachers shout, "Fine, fine, fine!" The teachers and the students are so happy with what Mr. King announced that they shout out a very big "fine, fine, fine." They are so loud everyone can hear them. Now let's check our understanding with some reading comprehension questions for the day today. This would be a great place for you to pause the video and get your pencil and paper ready to write your answers down. Remember, boys and girls, you can always pause the video after each question to write your answer down. Our first question says, remember that authors carefully choose words to help readers better understand a text. What does Mr. King do to learn what is happening at his school? For this question, boys and girls, we can go back to page 22 and reread the text. Let's read that together to see if we can find our answer. That day, Mr. King walked up and down the halls, looking at the children and the teachers. Up and down he walked, up and down, up and down. Using what I've just read to you, boys and girls, what does Mr. King do to learn what is happening at his school? Our next question says, on page 23, we see one child brushing his teeth. What does this tell you about the boy? So we're going to use the illustration on page 23. And I can see there is a boy standing there. He's got toothpaste in his hand and his toothbrush, and he's brushing his teeth. Do we normally brush our teeth at school, boys and girls? What does this picture tell you about the boy? Our last question says, what can you learn from the text and the illustrations on page 24 about how the children and the teachers are feeling. So in this question, boys and girls, we're going to read the text and use the illustrations to help us find the answer. Let's reread the text together. The next morning, Mr. King called everyone together. The children and the teachers were very worried. Mr. King said, "This is a fine, fine school with fine, fine children and fine, fine teachers, but not everyone is learning." The children and the teachers were very, very worried. So using the illustration and the text that we just read, what can you learn from the text and illustrations on page 24 about how the teachers and children are feeling? What sentence in there tells you how the children and the teachers are feeling? What do the children and teachers' faces look like when Mr. King makes his announcement? What do you think, boys and girls? Now it is time for our writing activity for your journal today. Remember, boys and girls, this is an optional activity, but if you would like to join me, this would be a good place to pause the video while you get your journal and pencil ready. Our journal writing prompt today says, good writers often use descriptive words known as adjectives to better help the reader understand the text. An adjective is a word that describes a noun. It can describe a noun's size, shape, color, or texture. For example, in the sentence, she wore a green hat. The word green would be an adjective because it describes the color of the hat. In your journal writing activity today, think about the opinion statement you wrote yesterday. Rewrite the statement again today and try to add an adjective to your statement. Also, be sure you are using your best handwriting and watching the spacing to create a published work of your writing. Remember, yesterday you wrote how you would feel if you had more school and gave your reason why you would feel that way. What are some words you could use to describe your feelings? Then rewrite your opinion so that Mr. King really understands how that makes you feel. Now let's revisit our learning intentions and success criteria to see how well we did today. In this lesson, we are learning how the words authors choose in a story help us better understand the characters, settings, and events in a story. We will know we are successful when we can identify the story elements of a text, use key details to describe the story elements, and use key details to identify the central message or the lesson of the story. So let's think about this. What are the three elements of a story? I can see characters, settings, and events. Also, it told us we would be successful if we could use key details to describe the story elements. We learned today about adjectives. We can use adjectives to describe our characters, our settings, and our events. We also learned to use key details to identify the central message of the story or the lesson in the story. So think about, what do you think the author was trying to teach us about having too much school? I'm sure you did an absolutely fabulous job today. I think you are the best readers. I've so enjoyed our reading adventures. Thank you so much for sharing your reading time with me. Until next time, have a great day, boys and girls.